Okay.
I'll just
Nice.
one second. Okay, can you say something again?
Hello. Testing. 1, 2, 3.
Not yet completely. Because I tried to put you on the main speaker.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's just on my laptop. It's a bit
I
silent.
see. Okay.
It drops out.
Hello. 1, 2, 3. Testing. This is Steven.
One second.
The Bluetooth speaker?
Yes, that's what I'm trying, but I think because
Jonathan, can you go out of the speaker so that he can...
because when I try to connect it,
You can connect it, sure.
Sorry, we have a little bit of a technical setup.
But it's already better than yesterday, so. Let me see. This time it stays connected. Okay.
Hello. Testing. 1, 2, 3.
Oh, yeah, awesome.
Yeah? Can you hear me?
I just have to make it louder. Maybe you just go up and make it louder.
Speaker.
Cool. All right. Did you go on? Did you?
Yes, we are streaming.
All right, we're streaming. Perfect. Yeah. So, welcome and thank you for joining us. I think it was a bit last minute, or maybe at least you saw it quite late. Yeah, we're really happy that you found the time to join, and maybe you can. We were watching the talk that you had, or the interview with Rufus Pollock, and you were basically talking about DAOs and worker cooperatives, many other things. So that's kind of what we are also interested. Like we have like kind of a diverse set of speakers, but like we're really happy to learn more about, or maybe others can use this, what you do or your experience as an example, and try to maybe copy or do something similar, learn from it.
So, and is it possible that we can have this as a bit of a conversation then on this topic?
Totally. Yeah, I mean, that's totally possible.
Okay, great. So what should I do? A short introduction to who I am? Is that useful?
It's because I think, I mean, maybe I do know a bit, but like not everyone does. So also maybe people watching the live stream, they might also not know.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, my name is Stephen Reid, and I live in Totnes in Devon in southwest UK. I have 3 threads to my professional life. I'm a coach, so I work one-on-one with people, helping them achieve their hopes and their dreams. I'm a teacher. Over the past couple of years, I've been teaching courses mainly on Web3, although I've just finished a course called Life as Practice, which is a little bit different, more about just how we can live happy, healthy, wholesome lives. And the third thread of my life is that I work for a not-for-profit worker cooperative called Dandelion Collective, which has a few different projects. The largest 2 are the Psychedelic Society, which is one of the largest alternative events organizations in the UK, running something like 30 events a month, not just on psychedelics, on all kinds of related topics and on altered states of consciousness. But the main project I work on within Dandelion Collective is the Dandelion Web Platform, which is a platform for hosting events and also co-created gatherings. When I say co-created gatherings, that feature was inspired by experiences at the European Burning Man events, when you just have a group of people coming together, probably like you have there actually right now, a group of people coming together, no one is particularly in charge, just coming together on this quite kind of horizontal basis to make something beautiful happen. So that's what the gatherings feature in Dandelion is all about. I've become very passionate on the topic of co-ops, of DAOs, of teal organizations. I don't know whether that language will be so familiar to you. That's from the book Reinventing Organizations, which is based on integral theory, or now people might talk a bit more as metamodern theory. And I dream of a world where the vast majority of organizations are organized in this kind of horizontal, highly participatory way, a world without bosses, which isn't necessarily to say that the organizations are leaderless, but I prefer to think of them as leaderful, that everyone has the potential for being a leader, of stepping up at the right time when there is a challenge or a project that is aligned to their skill set. And of course, that is what people are hoping that DAOs can become, that DAOs have this similar quality of being leaderful organizations. And there's some very interesting conversations going on right now of the similarities and differences between DAOs and co-ops and what they can learn from one another. So there you go, that's my introduction.
So yeah, that's great. I think that's super interesting. And I think, like if you're saying that you are such a large organization in all the events, I mean, it sounds great, but like, are you using the DAOs for organizing the events? Like, is that like, how does the practice look like? It's like the theory sounds great, but it's super hard to imagine how that translates into like everyday routines.
So Dandelion is not a DAO. Dandelion is a project of Dandelion Collective, which is a co-op. So I'm not at this point, although I've been teaching about DAOs, I'm not actually involved in any one DAO to any great extent. There is the possibility, the thought of actually launching a Dandelion DAO that would take ownership of the web or events hosting web platform which is at dandelion.earth. But I have some kind of concerns, if you like, with that. Like, so a core feature of worker co-ops, or most worker co-ops, is one person, one vote. And whereas most DAOs in the Web3 space right now go by token voting, which is essentially plutocratic. It's like whoever if you've got enough money, you can buy the tokens, which then means you control the DAO, which is kind of boring. Like, that's not the kind of organization I'm interested in. I'm not interested in plutocratic organizations. I'm interested in democratic organizations where, and it doesn't have to necessarily be like one person, one vote, but I would I'm certainly kind of drawn towards some kind of capping of influence. And so there's the two most popular ways of doing that. One would be percentile voting, so that one person can only have, say, up to 100 times the voting power of the person with the least voting power. And alternatively, something like quadratic voting, where your voting power is scaled as the square root of the number of tokens that you hold, but simply allowing people to like just accumulate tokens like without and thus accumulate voting power without limit is like, it seems quite dull to me. This doesn't seem like anything progressive, particularly progressive or revolutionary about that. So I will say that there's Moloch DAOs, which are being kind of pioneered by DAO House at this point, do have a different flavor there, with this difference between like economic shares and voting shares. And that's actually was the DAO House platform, and Moloch DAOs were the focus of the How to DAO course that I taught, because I think, that actually, there's something kind of different and interesting going on there. So we're kind of in the design phase for Dandelion DAO, but certainly like a key design criteria is like it cannot be plutocratic. We want to make it so that it's resistant to the possibility of someone with a load of money just coming in and buying a load of tokens and then taking control of the platform. Fortunately, there are great solutions like Proof of Humanity and Gitcoin's Proof of Personhood passport really kind of coming to maturity that will likely make one person, one vote, or at least one person, some restricted amount of votes, much easier to do than it has been to this point. So I'm very excited to witness the flourishing of such of kind of civil resistance in the DAO voting context.
Hey, I'm Nina. We mute ourselves in between. That's why.
Yeah, no worries.
What I'm wondering is, like you said, you have experience with worker cooperatives.
Yeah.
So what do you see as a novelty with DAOs? Is it just like a technical infrastructure, or yeah?
Yeah. So let me just. I wonder if I could. Is it easy for me to share my screen on this?
It should be. There should be a button for screen
Yeah.
sharing.
So share. Okay. You seeing something here?
You have it next to the camera and the microphone button.
Yeah, I've clicked to share, but it seems like it's not coming up for some reason. That's weird. Okay, never mind. I'll just stop that. So yes, so some of the benefits of DAOs over traditional co-ops might include minimal startup costs. So co-ops can be, depending on the complexity of the co-op, like relatively costly to start up. You might need like specialists, like legal advice to make sure you're doing everything properly. There are minimal exit and entry costs for participants. Again, sometimes it can be quite bureaucratic to onboard someone to a co-op. But actually for a DAO, it's just usually a case of just kind of passing a vote and then boom, they're in. And similarly, I love the rage quit feature of Moloch DAOs that makes it like very just totally transparent about if someone leaves, what are they going to leave with? Which in the short answer is they're going to leave with an appropriate fraction of the DAO's treasury. Full transparency, like co-ops, can seek to move towards a place of transparency. There's a great movement called Open Startups of like a group of all kinds of organizations that are doing their best to publish as much data, including financial data about the organization, just out on the web where anyone can check it out. And I think that's awesome. But DAOs, of course, kind of have that feature just by default. It's like you don't need to do any extra work to make the full workings of the DAO, including the DAO's finances, visible. It's just a natural consequence of working on public blockchains. Censorship resistance. This is an interesting one. So the Psychedelic Society, or the co-op that I work with now, started just as the Psychedelic Society, and we were campaigning for the legal regulation of psychedelic substances. And we repeatedly had problems with bank accounts being shut down, our Stripe account being shut down. We were essentially being censored because of the nature of our work and because various institutions get quite nervous around anything to do with psychedelics. But you could imagine other industries as well, sex, drugs, rock and roll, anything in that line of work. You might have problems with these quite conservative financial institutions. And censorship resistance arguably is like the core quality of Web3 and blockchain, so what makes it all worthwhile. So no one, even in principle, could shut down a psychedelic society DAO. Fortunately, we're in a better place with our relationships with kind of Stripe and banks and so on nowadays. So it doesn't feel necessary exactly, but depending on the topic that you're engaging in, that might be a very important advantage. DAOs are global by default or borderless. So the Dandelion Collective is a UK registered worker cooperative. But if you're working on a topic which is, I don't know, say like something climate related, something where like it's inherently international, multinational, then the idea of having a DAO that is also kind of international or global by default, and by living on the internet, it doesn't care about borders, just as climate change doesn't care about borders, for example, might feel quite aligned. The DAOs have ultimately very kind of clear, predictable organizational processes by virtue of just being run as a set of smart contracts. Whereas a co-op would have a constitution written in English or some linguistic language. There can be unclarity and argument about, what actually does that clause in the Constitution mean? But ultimately, no one can really argue with a smart contract. And finally, quite quite probably most DAOs will find it easier to raise capital relative to co-ops. At least co-ops in the UK are actually kind of even legally relatively constrained over what kinds of shares that they can issue. Whereas most people are aware that there are many DAOs that have done token launches and raised very significant amounts of capital. at least in the bull market time. Maybe things are a bit different now. We're in the bear market, but just it seems there's more possibilities of raising capital in creative ways relative to co-ops. So that basically is a whole bunch of possible advantages of DAOs over co-ops. Many of them are still somewhat speculative, if you like, and we're in the process of really exploring all of them and saying, okay, do they all really stack up? But I'm hopeful for a number of reasons.
Is there like an easy way for worker cooperatives to transition? Do you know anything? Like if there is some traditional worker cooperative and they want to go and try out DAOs, like is there like a clear pathway that they could take to try it out? Like, okay, go, I don't know.
Yeah, so so Moloch DAOs and the DAO House platform seem to me to be very aligned with the worker co-op ethos. One advantage of Moloch DAOs is you don't need a token. You just issue voting shares in the Moloch DAO. So they seem like a kind of appropriate first step, and a co-op can start using a DAO to kind of just manage its kind of democratic processes and its budgeting processes. Tomorrow, there's nothing stopping a co-op using that technology. And even whilst, and maybe even just it doesn't even have to be they don't even have to go all in. It could just be, okay, we're going to put 10% of our revenue each quarter into a DAO, and we're going to and manage that budget through kind of the DAO democratic mechanisms, or we're gonna use the DAO to make decisions on this topic and this topic, but everything else and all the other money we're going to stick with our conventional processes. And then so essentially it's kind of being a bit of a hybrid between a co-op and a DAO, and ultimately the technology as far as I'm concerned, should serve a purpose. It's what is actually the purpose of that organization, and then so try these different technologies and see, are they actually making our life easier? Are we actually is the benefit from using a censorship-resistant technology actually worth the potential drawbacks? The one, of course, the biggest drawback right now is that lots of people, certainly including lots of people in my co-op, are just still unfamiliar with Web3. They don't have a Web3 wallet. They don't know what the hell MetaMask is. And whereas once you're in that world, you can say, it's quite easy to forget how strange it is if you haven't been in it for a while. Probably we don't think anything. Oh yeah, just go to that site and sign this message, or do this transaction with this smart contract, or whatever, but for most people, they're just what are you talking about? And just in the same way, and that's okay, at some point, email was like that too. If you said, just go to Hotmail or whatever it was at the time and just send me a quick email, there were the people who had just been totally freaked out by that thought. And I anticipate that we're kind of at that stage of Web3, as far as I can tell, where a lot of people are just kind of scared of it, and just it feels very strange and unfamiliar. But I imagine in no more than 10 years, just as you don't have to explain anything about what email is or what a web browser is to people, we will get to that place with Web3, and then these kinds of experiments with moving from co-ops to DAOs will feel a lot more possible when there's just a general familiarity with the technology and the mechanisms and the wallets and so on. Because for sure right now that's a pretty major barrier. Like most DAOs are DAOs of crypto natives who are already in the crypto world, who are already familiar with all this kind of stuff, and then they chose to organize around a purpose. We have, as far as I know, we haven't seen that many kind of existing organizations or existing co-ops making that leap. And I would suggest, as I said, that's because you would actually have to invest a lot of time and effort in training people into the use of the wallets and so on.
Yeah, that sounds very cool. I'm also wondering, you said you're part of many projects, and the biggest one was, did you say organize 30 events a month? Did I understand that?
Yes. So Dandelion Collective, the two main projects is one we have the Psychedelic Society, which is an events brand, and then we also have a web platform called Dandelion, which is where the events are kind of listed and hosted. So it's like content and form or something like this, and which has been great because I work more on the platform side of things, but I'm constantly getting really good, meaningful feedback from event organizers and from my colleagues who are organizing events on a kind of daily basis using the platform. So this is kind of co-evolution between the events themselves and the platform that the events are hosted on. Yeah.
That's interesting. I mean, first because you have the website or the digital infrastructure, you maybe can even. It sounds like you could even try to introduce some of the Web3 features at some point.
Yeah, actually, there are some. So I mean, you can sign into Dandelion. So Dandelion, I'd say, is a kind of Web 2.5 platform right now. So you can sign in with Ethereum, and you can choose to accept payment for event tickets in either via Coinbase Commerce, which is a kind of custodial crypto platform, or Seller or Gnosis chain on a non-custodial basis, where people are just sending funds directly to some contract address or some wallet address. So right now, there's nothing Web3 about Dandelion beyond sign-in and payments. In principle, the tickets could all be NFTs. All of the orders and event information could be on chain. Maybe at some point that will be the case, but I'm a kind of pragmatist when it comes to Web3. I'm not going to just put everything on chain for the sake of it. The most important piece so far has been this payments piece, it seems. But let's see what happens in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Moloch DAO, as far as I know, is mostly for managing funds or deciding where to invest or what to spend the funds on. Like an organization, or I mean, you have many, but the largest organizing 30 events per month. Sounds like a lot of people and a lot of things that have to be done and organized. And do you how do, like you said, there's also the idea is, or practice is, that there are no bosses, it's all horizontally organized. So I'm wondering, how do processes look like, and beyond just the finance side of things, how can DAOs help, or are there any plans, maybe even projects where this is discussed to try out?
The key rhythm in, let's say two key rhythms. I'm going to go with three key rhythms in the co-op. So one is that we have a bunch of different projects. We have 5 different projects. I've mentioned the biggest 2. The people on the team for that particular project meet every week. So that's the kind of most regular rhythm. And then as a collective, so delegates from all of the different teams meet every month. And then every 3 months, those delegates also will do a participatory budgeting process. So we see how much money we made in the previous quarter, and we say, okay, we decide how much of that we're going to spend in the next quarter. So it's like, okay, we made 50K, we're going to spend 40K of that in the next quarter, and then we have it's kind of like an internal crowdfunding round, if you like. So different delegates from the different projects do like project proposals and say, oh well, I want or we want 10K to spend on the Psychedelic Society to do this over the next 3 months, and I might say for Dandelion, well, I want 5K to do this. And so we end up with all of these project pitches, and everyone gets a chance to present their project, Dragon's Den style in a way. But but we're both, in this instance, we're both the proposers and also the dragons. So and so then we have this is right in for the right now. It's literally just a Google sheet, and we have all the project proposals are the columns, and the rows are the people. And so so I can just go through I just go across my row, deciding, okay, how much am I going to allocate to these different projects, and we just sum up how much. I forgot one piece. So each person is allocated a certain amount of money, and the amount of money, the percentage of the total pot that you get to spend depends on how much work you did in the previous quarter. People that put a lot of effort in get a greater say than people that didn't do very much in the previous quarter. And so, and then we just like sum up, what people have allocated across these different projects and that determines how much they're going to get they receive for that next quarter. So this is like the kind of core rhythm of the organization that could absolutely be done using a Moloch v2 DAO. It just in our context though, like we're already in a very like high trust environment. We already kind of know each other, like each other, know where each other live. We all live in the UK. It's like it just doesn't really feel necessary to use a DAO given our context. If we were an international organization, especially where we had some people that were pseudonymous or or didn't know each other well, then I think like a Moloch DAO would be a better choice probably than just trying to do it using something like a sheet. Yeah.
So I'm kind of going to be thinking as I'm asking this question at the same time. What you're kind of talking about a lot is like using a DAO. What we're talking about here specifically is using a DAO to allow a group of people who don't necessarily trust each other to manage some resources.
Mm-hmm.
But what I've kind of been really interested in recently is gathering a group of people that do trust each other quite a bit, manage public resources.
Mm-hmm.
And in that scenario, like having a small group of having a high trust environment is quite good, and where putting it on chain and making it a DAO is useful is in getting other people's trust that the funds won't be misused, so that you can actually raise resources and like interact with other things in the blockchain ecosystem.
So when you say public resources, you're talking about like a kind of a small group of people managing kind of someone else's money, or like a kind of a pot of other people's money. I think you're totally right that's like a potentially use case where DAO would be very appropriate. That kind of reminds me of that one of the other advantages that I spoke of, which is that transparency piece. Like when if a DAO just offers that transparency by default, and the transparency is going to be very important to this wider group of the public that have actually contributed the money, then totally I can see how a DAO is appropriate. So and it makes me think that the kind of appeal here is just like let's just be pragmatic about like when and why we're using DAOs and when and why we're using Web3. Let's just not use Web3 just because it's the sexy, cool new thing. You know, like co-ops have been around for 100 years. They're doing a lot of things right. At the same time, you know, there's lots that the co-ops can learn from Web3. But depending on the project, if it is a small project where everyone is based in the same country and they already trust each other well, then like it may actually be very good reasons to kind of just be a co-op and just wait until you really need to go down the DAO path necessarily. Equally, you know, if people come together and there are good reasons for being a DAO from the very beginning, then that's great. Let's just be aware that like these possibilities both exist, and they both have their unique advantages.
One more question. I'm also not sure if I understood that, because before you mentioned you have this budgeting process, participatory budgeting process to decide how much to fund to projects. But then you also said it's to people or something that like a specific person get the budget, or maybe I misunderstood that.
Well, so so we have 5 projects in Dandelion Collective, and each of those 5 projects has one or more delegates at the highest level. So actually, these 5 projects get assigned different like funding power, if you like, but the people that ultimately it's actually the delegates, the people that are deciding like how that funding is being spent. So yeah, I can understand why there was some confusion over that, but it relates to the system of delegates that we have.
Okay, so basically every project also always means there's a specific person, or maybe even multiple, but maybe usually one that is responsible or manages that.
Exactly.
Okay.
So within the Psychedelic Society has about 9 people in the team, but we don't want or need all 9 people to participate in the participatory budgeting process. So they just pick 2 of those 9 people to kind of represent the interests of that part of the organization in this process.
Okay, that makes sense. Now the project is like if it would be like in terms of doing a project as a task, it's like a huge task. I mean, depends even on the size of the project. But then I think that probably when the budget is assigned to a project and then the project gets executed, there will be broken down into more subtasks or sub projects, and then at some point there's even like some operational everyday small tasks that have to get done.
Yeah.
Did you think about including some of that in DAOs too, or I don't know? I'm just wondering how far does it go?
So that's a great question. So in the Dandelion Collective co-op context, actually, so at the top level, the Psychedelic Society, as one of our 5 projects, gets like a certain amount of money. And then now, for the first time over these past few months, the Psychedelic Society basically repeats that process like within the Psychedelic Society to decide like, okay, so we got 20K from Dandelion, and now we're going to work out within the Psychedelic Society how that money is spent by essentially using the same process. So, and this in the DAO context, this is akin to the idea of sub DAOs within DAOs. So like you could have a top level DAO where some of the token holders might be individuals, but some of the token holders or like vote holders, if it's a Moloch DAO, might themselves be DAOs. I think this idea, this kind of reminds me of systems of like holocracy or sociocracy, or even if you like, just living systems. Living systems are made of holons. Beautiful word. Like a holon is both like a whole and a part of a greater whole. Like, for example, my liver is like a whole. It's a whole organ, but it's also like forming part of the greater whole that is my body. And I think it can be very wise to like look for inspiration in living systems, and this system of like circles within circles or DAOs within DAOs, or has this kind of flavor to it.
Is one of the projects developing like DAOs or the software side of things, or at least the ideas to then maybe have proposals for projects that receive maybe a budget in the participatory budgeting process to bring it to more projects? Or do you even have a software already that supports that process, even for the sub-DAO levels?
Yeah, so the software that we use to handle this process is just a system of Google Sheets. You know, like it's not at a software level is really not complicated. But the far larger part is this human piece. And so firstly, you know, a human being needs to write that project proposal. Like no software, you know, maybe you can get some help from AI nowadays, but ultimately it needs to be like a human being, or some human beings need to decide, oh, you know, we really want to do this in the next 3 months, and then they need to kind of, you know, write a good pitch and so on, and then again, it's a very human thing to actually present that well. And then finally, there's this very human problem of usually in total people are asking for more money than we have available in the pot. Okay, so usually some projects are not going to get funded, or not going to receive as much money as they want, and that's sensitive. You know, like sometimes people can feel like kind of hurt or disappointed that their project, that they put a lot of work into preparing this project pitch and then it didn't get funded. And so again, there's just like a sensitive human element of there of just, you know, at the very least communicating that, or allowing people to feel that their project has been like really seriously considered, and if it's not being funded, it's not because it's nothing personal, if you like. So, but my experience is all of the hard work in these participatory budgeting processes is all on the human side. It's not on the software side, and so far our experience is like, I mean, we've put quite a lot of work into the sheets that we use, but like. That isn't like the kind of the larger part of the process. Yeah.
One question, like, or maybe two questions. Like, one is, are those sheets open source or somewhere available?
Yeah, I could easily send them to you afterwards. That's no problem at all. You know, but you could. Just telling you, like, describing how we've made them, like, you could probably create your own version in sort of, you know, an hour or something. But I'll happily share them with you afterwards for your interest.
All right. Another one is,
I mentioned one platform which is kind of doing this in a bit more of an advanced way, but like not that much more advanced, is called Co-Budget. So it's this has a kind of nice web interface where people can do this kind of project pitching, and then you can allocate tokens, not kind of Web3 tokens, but just like points, if you like, to various participants in that group, and then they can allocate these points across these different projects. So this is used by, and was actually, one of the biggest users of this software now is the Borderland, which is the Swedish Burning Man event, and they're using it very effectively. Essentially, like the sheet that I've described to you that we're using would work well for up to, I don't know, sort of maybe 50 people and 50 projects. But beyond that, probably something like Co-Budget is a more sensible option. Yeah.
Cool. When for example, I mean, there's many projects, but like one would organize the events, and I don't know how the events get organized, but I imagine there's also some equipment involved, some tools, some basically a bunch of assets that are maybe then owned by whom? By individuals or by projects or by the organizations? How do you assign those or deal with that?
Yeah, good question. Actually, the answer is there's not that much equipment. like most of the events that we run are, their talks, their film screenings, their meditation, their yoga, their, this kind of thing. So we actually used to run a physical space in London. And that we closed that at the start of the pandemic. So we actually have a lockup in London with a whole load with like a sound system and furniture and all kinds of physical stuff. And but generally this isn't like a big part of the organization. And we haven't really had to deal with this question of who owns this stuff. Like, is it Dandelion Collective as a whole, or is it like the Psychedelic Society, or is it some part of the Psychedelic Society? Maybe at some point we have to deal with that question, but so far it hasn't really come.
Right, I see. Okay, that's interesting. I mean, we definitely have to follow along, and maybe we are doing this type of event like once a year. Maybe we have to. I think we have one speaker that was part, because the last event was before the pandemic, that will actually give us a little bit of an update. So what happened in between. So maybe we should definitely also see if you have to solve the asset question in the future. How do you do that? Yeah, we try to follow up. But yeah, it's a very, very interesting project and a very interesting way of organizing things.
So it feels like maybe our conversation's coming to an end now. But so apart from emphasizing this piece about being pragmatic about whether we pick kind of co-ops or DAOs, the other thing that I really want to like highlight from this conversation is just like human beings, human relationships. Like whether you're a DAO or whether you're a co-op, ultimately it's something that's still made of humans. Like the kind of decentralized autonomous organization sometimes sort of, I don't know, confuses people in this way. But like the autonomous, and the best way of I find of understanding that, and I've heard of understanding that, is autonomous refers to like the autonomy of human beings. It doesn't refer to, it's not meaning to suggest that these organizations run themselves. It's still human beings running these organizations ultimately, and these human beings need to be kind to one another, and they need to like listen well to one another, and at best, they need to care and even love one another, in the context of some common purpose. And so that's it's a constant challenge, right? Including when people are passionate about a certain purpose and have different ideas about how to like achieve that, that goal, then there will be arguments, there will be disagreements. And so that reminds me, another piece is conflict resolution. It's just accepting that conflict is an inevitable part of these kinds of organizations and people organizing this way, and saying that's okay, it's going to happen, and like let's accept that and just get good at dealing with conflict, rather than like hoping it doesn't happen or pretending it doesn't happen. Because conflict doesn't have to be like the end of the world or the end of an organization or the end of a project. It can actually it can often be a fantastic way of learning about each other and learning about what might need to change to take that organization forward.
I sometimes think about DAOs not as autonomous organizations, but maybe just automated. So basically you're trying to see the patterns and like try to get this know-how into some sort of automation, so that you don't have to deal with bureaucracy and like get papers that people vote and like, I don't know, calculating the votes, instead of using the tool that can just give you all these results.
Humans leverage.
Huh?
Give the humans leverage.
Yeah. No, but the thing is that often I see that people who are organizing in these kind of alternative ways, without using technology, they don't want to think so much about all these rules and like automating things. They want to kind of rely more on a feeling, like gut feeling. So when you introduce them to the idea of DAOs where they could automate certain things, they kind of feel scared, because it's like, I don't want to do this. I literally run away from this, because from job everything is like so, standardized and automated, and it feels like alienated. So it's like that's why we go into all these groups where we can do human relationships. And now you're bringing me these DAOs and all this kind of like boring structure and automation, this coldness, back to this world. So it's like, how can we make this more warm, human?
I think that's a super interesting and important point. And so it makes me think of rage quit, for example. So like rage quit as like a kind of automated mechanism for people leaving an organization. So it's a funny thing. Like my experience is that the clearer people are about how they can quit an organization or a project, the more motivated they are in the project, and the greater sense of belonging and ease they can feel in the project. And conversely, like if people are kind of not clear about like, can I even leave, or what would it mean to leave, or if I leave, like would my contribution be recognized? This can be a very common source of tension and disagreement. So it makes me think of that. So in some sense if there is like a automatic or automated process for people leaving with their fair share, i.e. rage quit, then that can offer participants greater autonomy, like in the sense of feeling more free in that organization to do their best work, and not like feel any sense of like confusion or uncertainty about, well, how would that actually work? And you could talk about other things. It doesn't have to be like leaving the organization, but just that's certainly, it seems like to be an advantage of DAOs. Like code, no matter how well you write English or whatever language, like I would say code is always going to be clearer. That's the beauty of code, is that like it's maths essentially, right? You can't argue with like the result of a deterministic smart contract in the same way you can at least try and argue about the meaning of a word in a kind of legal contract. And that I think is a wonderful advantage of DAOs that can help people to just enjoy their work more and get on with what they love.
All right. Maybe one question would then be, how can we check and follow what you're doing, and how maybe you're using DAO? And do you have any links that you could maybe share with everyone who's watching? Yeah, we have a chat. You could
there. So let's see. So should I put it in the chat for the video room? Yeah. So as my personal site, I'd love you to check out the Dandelion Web Platform at dandelion.earth. Please do host your next event or next gathering using Dandelion rather than Eventbrite or Ticketailor or whatever. I don't know what people are using nowadays, but what else can I point you towards? I think there's a lot of different stuff on my website, so I'm sure people will find interesting different threads there if you haven't already checked it out.
Something like I think you mentioned, I might be wrong here, did you mention the Swedish Burning Man?
Yes, yeah, Borderland, yeah.
Borderland, okay. I have to check that out.
Let me put a link to that too, yeah.
Yeah, I'm from Sweden, and the thing is, during the pandemic, I discovered, we had the lockdowns and stuff like that, but today we have a really autonomous, emergent rave culture.
Yes.
These kind of parties are completely self-organized. They use events and stuff like that. Pretty much, it's a mailing list. That's how we solve all the thing. Yeah. Could we use Dandelion for that kind of use case?
Yeah. So the Dandelion Web Platform has like two parts of it. It has like events and organizations, which is like kind of very similar to like Eventbrite or Ticket-Tailor, that kind of thing. But then the gatherings feature is designed for these highly co-created gatherings, typically lasting between 2 days and 2 weeks for maybe between 20 and 200 people. So that's the kind of scale. Like if you're talking about that kind of scale, then the gatherings feature on Dandelion could very well be interesting to you. Yeah.
Let me check it out. It's interesting. They're just like every weekend.
I tell you what, I will send I recently did a presentation to a kind of tour of Dandelion for Kernel, which is a kind of Gitcoin associated kind of community, Web3 community project. Let me just find that and post that in the chat as well. But it's been a pleasure to be with you today. Thanks so much for having me and for all of your interesting questions. It always stimulates more ideas for me. I'm just gonna so I just posted the link to the Dandelion chat where I could do like a pretty thorough tour of the gatherings feature, so you can understand really what that is about. So one more.
Thanks a lot also for joining us. And Jonathan, one of our participants, he's an artist, so while we have talks, he's always like sketching.
Wow.
So Jonathan, do you want to share?
Wow, that's beautiful.
We'll post this on Twitter, but I think instead of calling it rage quit, just call it a divorce. Essentially what it is.
Divorce, yeah, you're right.
Because, like we've been talking about Nash equilibriums and stability in game theory a lot lately, and we talked about marriage and divorce and how having the actual clear exit strategy for a divorce creates a more stable marriage.
Yeah,
and that's kind of what rage quit is.
Yeah, exactly. Sort of. Yeah, exactly, and that's I was kind of just speaking to that piece a few minutes ago. I think there's a lot of wisdom in that insight. Yeah. Nice.
Okay, so this was super lovely. Thank you so much. We streamed it, so it's on YouTube. We'll send you a link.
Yeah.
So hopefully we meet sometime somewhere in real life.
I was actually just this morning I was speaking to a guy called Mars, who was actually involved with the astral ship at some point, and I think he said he might be there again soon. So I've actually I didn't realize you would be at astral ship until I until after I said I would speak and I went on the website. And so I actually hope to visit the astral ship at some point as well. So I hope you guys are.
Yeah, Liam, who's basically a captain of the ship, he will also have a talk, so then you can kind of also...
Yeah, about the astral ship, and we're also still here until the 10th, so if you want
I'm about to go on a meditation retreat, actually, so I'm not going to make it this time, but I hope you have a good time there, and thanks for doing what you're doing by hosting all these interesting talks.
All right, so then we'll post it, we'll send you the links, and we take care, and we'll ping you for the next year's event too.
Nice one, take care, bye now.